Hello, welcome back to Jenkins video series from Edureka. In this video, we are going to talk about getting started with Jenkins. Now, the objectives of this video would be to understand how to install Jenkins on a local machine, how to get started with Jenkins once it is installed and configured. We will take a look at some of the terminologies used in Jenkins. And overall, we will take a look at the overview of Jenkins UI. What are the important elements of the Jenkins console? And finally, we will create our first Jenkins job and we will build it for the first use. So with that, let's get started. Jenkins installation. So in order to install Jenkins, one of the prerequisites is to have Java installed on the machine. Now, Jenkins requires minimum Java 7 to be installed. However, it is recommended to have Java 8 installed on your machine on which you are going to install Jenkins. The installation procedure for Jenkins remains pretty much very straightforward. Whether you are trying to install it on Windows or Linux or Mac, it does not make much of a difference. Basically, you just need to download the latest package if you are on a Windows machine and open the package, just click on next, and the setup guide will take you through all the procedure. Once it is done, you just need to go to the browser and go to localhost :8080 and you can proceed with Jenkins configuration. Similarly, if you are on an Ubuntu machine, you need to update your apt-get key so that it has got the latest Jenkins key, and then do a apt-get update and then apt-get install Jenkins. Similarly, if you are on a Mac machine, you can either use Brew, which is a package manager utility for MacBook, so you can use a Brew install Jenkins, or you can go ahead and download the latest package for Jenkins for Mac from jenkins.io or jenkins.org webpage. Another way would be to install through the var package, which is available on jenkins.io main page. You just need to download the var package and then you can install it just like any other Java package. The only prerequisite would be to have Java installed on your machine, which is anyways you need to do. Whichever mechanism you are using to install Jenkins does not actually make a difference. You need to have Java installed on your machine because Jenkins is a Java package, it's a Java application, so it requires Java binaries in order to run. Similarly, if you are using var package to install Jenkins, the simplest way would be to download the var package first, then open the terminal prompt window and go to the directory where you have jenkins.var package downloaded, and you just need to run the command java -jar jenkins.var and it will install the package, and then just like any other mechanism, you can just go to localhost :8080 and access your Jenkins instance via a web browser. Let's say if you're trying to access Jenkins installation from some other machine, then you need to replace localhost with the actual IP address of your machine. Once that is done, you need to do the post installation setup, which actually involves one of the admin password to be retrieved from the actual machine and then a couple of plugin setups. But before we proceed to this step, let's just take a look at how exactly we can do an installation on a local machine. Here I'm using two different machines to show you the installation for Jenkins. As you can see, this machine, which is the host name is Neptune. NEL7, basically this is a CentOS machine, CentOS 7 to be more precise. And if I check the IP address of the machine, as you can see here, this is 172.28.28.148. Similarly, I have another machine called Pluto. Now this machine is an Ubuntu machine, and if I want to check the IP address, this has got 172.28.28.162. Now, as you know, before we can go ahead and install Jenkins, we need to have Java installed on this machine. So let's first take a look at this machine and let's see if we have Java. Now, as we have seen in one of the prerequisites, what we know is that you need to have Java installed on the machine on which you're trying to install Jenkins as well. So, and the easiest way to check whether Java is installed or not is to run java -version. And as long as you're getting some output like this, OpenJDK version, OpenJDK runtime, we are good to go. Similarly, if I check on the other machine, which is an Ubuntu, the command remains the same to check about Java. And once again, we have got this OpenJDK version 1.8 and OpenJDK runtime environment. So in both these machines, I can see that the Java is installed already. So we can go ahead and start with the Jenkins installation. So this is my CentOS machine. Now, before I go ahead and install Jenkins, the easiest command would be to do a sudo yum install Jenkins. However, it will tell me that no package Jenkins available at the moment, because in order to do this, I first need to update the repository details so that my Yum package manager identifies where to download Jenkins from. Now, to get the information on that, the easiest way would be to go to my jenkins.io webpage, which is the main official page for Jenkins. If I click on download, and then if I click on Red Hat, Fedora / CentOS, because all of them are Yum based repository system or RPM based flavors. So if you see here, it gives me all the command details, how can I add and then how can I work with Jenkins. It even gives me the RPM package if I want to go ahead the RPM way to install Jenkins. Now I can either go ahead and download this package, any one of them for installation, or if I want to use Yum to install Jenkins, I need to first add the repository. So for that, I will copy this command. So the first command will basically, as you can see, it downloads the repository location. It tells me where exactly the Jenkins repository is located. I just hit enter and gives me a success. Similarly, I need to add the key for package manager as well. So once again, I just copy the command and complete it. So it will basically import the correct key for the repository. So once that is done, I can simply issue this command called yum install Jenkins. Before I do that, let me just do a sudo yum update. So once I have updated the repository, I just need to issue this command called sudo yum install Jenkins. So this time, as you can see, it doesn't give me that message that says could not find Jenkins package. In fact, it is able to find, and it tells me that the version is 2.138.1/1 and the package size is 72 megabytes. So I just click on yes and hit enter. So it is going to take some time. So while it is doing, let's move on to the other machine and repeat the procedure. So now, since this is an Ubuntu machine, we basically need to go back and go to Ubuntu. And once again, you will see here it is adding the Debian repository location, which I need to do as well. And if I do a sudo apt-get install Jenkins, so if you see here, I need to add the repository location to this source list as well. So what I will do is echo this whole command and add this to my source list inside /etc/apt/sources.list. So it tells me permission denied because I need to be a root to perform this operation. So I'll become root and then I will just copy paste this command. So this time it looks like it has taken effect. Now I just need to do a sudo apt-get update and then sudo apt-get install Jenkins one by one. So let me issue those commands one by one. Sudo apt-get update. It might take a couple of seconds to complete. In fact, it does. It is done already. And now I can do a sudo apt-get install Jenkins. So this time it tells me the package size is 76 megabytes and there will be 2 new installations. So I just click on yes and I will proceed. So while it is happening, let's take a look at the other machine, the one with CentOS, if it has been completed or not. So as you can see, it tells that the installation is complete and successful. Looks like all good here. The next thing which I need to do is I need to check the service. So I need to make sure that the service is up and running. So as of now, it is not loaded. So I just need to do a start. And if I check the status again, this time it tells me that it is active and running. What I will additionally do is I will enable this service as well, so that next time when my machine reboots or stops and then it starts again, Jenkins service should be automatically brought up. I don't have to manually restart it. So since the installation is complete, we can proceed to the next step. But before we do that, let's just take a look at what we had here. So as a post-installation setup, once that is done, we need to go to any of the browsers and we need to do either localhost :8080 or the IP address :8080 because Jenkins by default listens on port 8080. Before I can do that, actually I need to have the IP address handy with me. So I'll just check the IP address of this machine. I'll just copy it and then I will go to my web browser. I will open up a new tab and along with the IP address, I need to suffix 8080 as the port number. So as you can see here, first screen which it brings up tells me that I need to unlock Jenkins, and it gives me a location as well from where I have to copy the password. Now this is to get rid of the unauthorized access, because as of now my Jenkins instance is completely insecure and anybody who has got the IP address which is for this machine If somebody has got the IP address, he or she can log into the machine and do whatever he or she wants. So this is completely insecure, and just to make sure that I am the right person who is trying to configure this machine, this has to be provided, because only I know, or only I can actually go ahead and do SSH to this machine and get this password for myself. So I'll go back to my terminal. I'm on my host called Neptune, where I have installed Jenkins. And if I do a cat and the whole path which I have copied, okay, it tells me permission denied. So I need to do a sudo -i first. And then if I do the same thing again, cat and then question, as you can see, it gives me an alphanumeric string, which I will copy, and I will come back to the Jenkins page. I will simply paste it and click on continue. As you can see here, it tells me as the first time configuration, it tells me install suggested plugins or select plugins to install. So it's pretty much, it gives you information about what are the plugins to be installed. And if I click on selected plugins to install or select plugins to install, it gives me all the plugins which are going to be installed. And I can actually go ahead and check or uncheck any of the plugins which I want, or if I do not want. On your left hand side, you can see the categories of plugins which are there. So if you see organization and administration, so where you have folders and dashboard view and markup formatter. If I go to build tools, I have the option of Ant, Gradle, MS Build, Node.js. So whatever platform I'm working on, I can go ahead and choose those plugins for my requirement. Similarly, what kind of build analysis tools I want, if there is any HTML publisher or JUnit I want to install. So all these things it gives you. If I come to source code management, if you see here, Git and SVN would be pre-checked. I can actually go ahead and check or uncheck any other source code management tools such as Bitbucket or ClearCase, CVS. If you see at the bottom, I have Team Concert and Team Foundation server, so GitLab, GitHub. So I will leave everything to default at this point in time. Whatever it is going ahead and installing seems fine to me. And I just need to go ahead and click on install, and then it will start the procedure automatically. So Jenkins will take care of all the default plugins which is supposed to be installed. It is going to take some time. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and pause the video and we will resume once it is done. So it has completed the installation, and as you can see, it is on the first page now where it is asking me to create the first admin user. So I will go ahead and do that. So it tells me that this is the instance configuration Jenkins URL, which I can utilize for all my future purposes. So I'll just click on save and finish. So it tells me that Jenkins is ready. Your Jenkins setup is complete. I can go ahead and click on this button called Start Using Jenkins, which will take me to the Jenkins homepage. So this is the first page which I get, and as you can see here, the IP address of the page is 172.28.28.148. If I compare that with my instance here, if you see, it is the same IP address. Now let's take a look at the other machine which we have installed Jenkins. So looks like even here on this Ubuntu machine, Jenkins installation is complete. So once again, I just need to check out. So if I do a service Jenkins status, it tells me that it is already up and running. So Ubuntu by default, when you install something, it starts the service automatically. So that is what it has done. So once again, I'll just check what is the IP address of this machine. And if I go ahead and copy this and open up a new tab, once again, 8080 to be suffixed, hit enter. And as you can see here, since this is my first time login to this machine, to this Jenkins instance, it is again asking me for the same initial admin password. And once again, I can just go ahead and copy the address. I'm already root, so I just do a cat and the path. It gives me the same alphanumeric initial admin password, which I can just copy or paste here and click on continue. And once again, it will greet me with the same welcome page which it has greeted the last time. Last time we clicked on select plugins to install. This time I will just go ahead and install suggested plugins, and it will do the same set of tasks for me as it did the last time. So once you have installed Jenkins and once you have done this initial setup completed, the rest of the things will be exactly the same, irrespective of whether you are on a CentOS machine or on a Ubuntu or Mac or Windows, anything. You will get the same type of UI, same set of information, same console, which will greet you here. So from now onwards, we will continue to work on this machine, which is ending with .148, which was a CentOS machine, if you remember. So we have seen the Jenkins installation. We have seen the post installation setup. This is what it tells you. So it gives you the location. You just need to cat the file to get the initial admin password, which is an alphanumeric string basically. So once you do that, you get two options as you have seen already: install suggested plugins and select plugins to install. So if you're fine with Jenkins's suggestions, we can go ahead and click on install suggested plugins, which is mostly correct. You don't need to play around too much over there because all the suggestions are based on the past usage of the users. And you will find most of the standard plugins which are most commonly used, for example, Git plugin, SVN plugin, Maven, and all these. And if let's say you want to have some specific plugins to be installed, or you have a specific requirement, you have a custom project to work on, then you can go ahead and click on select plugins to install, and you can then check and uncheck as we have seen already. And once again, finally, once the customization of Jenkins plugin page is complete, Jenkins will prompt you to create your first administrator user, which is again just giving a user ID and a password. And once you have created the first admin user, this is the Jenkins web page and the main Jenkins homepage, which welcomes you. Now is the time to take a look at the terminologies used in Jenkins. So the first and the most important terminology is a job or a project. So in Jenkins, we normally use these two terminologies interchangeably. So basically, it's a CI/CD pipeline which we utilize, which has got a number of steps. So a typical job would have steps like cloning from SCM. It might be a Git or an SVN, then maybe a couple of Maven builds or Maven test or Maven deploy or any of those steps. Then it will have user configured description of the work. So it can have some shell scripting to be called. It can have some other tasks to be executed based on which platform you are working on. So one of the very standard example of a job or a project is to building a piece of software. So there may be a Java build or a Java job or a Maven job or a .NET job which you are building with the help of Jenkins. Next is a build. Build is basically when you run your project or when you run your job, each iteration of that job is typically referred to as a build. So if you see in this screenshot, we have this project called Git Maven glassfish_build. And if you see, it has got a number of builds already there, build history as you can see. And the 45th build is which is being executed when this screenshot has been taken. So similarly, for each job, you first create the job one time once it is completed, once it is created successfully. Every time when you run that job, it will be referred as a build number XYZ. Next, we have a node or a slave. The term node is used to refer to all the machines that are part of Jenkins grid or a Jenkins slaves and master. We have the concept of master-slave architecture in Jenkins. So slaves are basically computers that are set up to build projects for the master. Now, it doesn't have to be there. Slave is not a compulsory component of Jenkins, but in most of the scenarios, in most of the companies or projects, you will find one master and multiple slaves as configured for your Jenkins infrastructure. Jenkins runs a separate program called slave agent on slaves. So what happens is there is a one Jenkins master machine which controls the rest of the slaves, and it uses basically for the compute capacity to make sure that the resource utilization is happening in the optimum possible way. That is the reason why Jenkins uses this concept of node or a slave. So when slaves are registered to a master starts distributing loads to slaves. So you can have different slaves. You can have 10, 15, 20, hundreds of slaves at your disposal. And based on certain criteria, you will actually, or Jenkins on your behalf will actually distribute the tasks to different slaves. So similarly, master is your main Jenkins machine, basically referred as Jenkins master. It is the central coordinating process which actually controls all of your Jenkins job. Any kind of configuration when you do, any kind of settings which you do with regards to Jenkins will be done on your Jenkins master, which stores your all the configuration details. It has got the information about all the plugins, anything which has to do with your Jenkins infrastructure. It has to be configured on your master machine. Then we have this concept of plugins. Now Jenkins is known to be based on pluggable architecture. What it means is that Jenkins you install as a bare metal machine, and then you have something called Jenkins core. Now whatever you need in order to work on Jenkins, you can install them in the form of a plugins. So let's say you want to work with Git as your source management repository. So you should install Git plugin for that. You want to work with Maven as your build tool. For that you need to have the Maven plugin installed on Jenkins master. Let's say you want to work with Puppet as a configuration management and you want to integrate Puppet with your Jenkins. So for that you need to have Puppet plugin installed on your Jenkins master. Another example would be, let's say you want to work with AWS or Azure and you want to, let's say, configure and spin up EC2 instances for all your compute capacity needs. And that is something which you want to do through Jenkins. So again, you need to have AWS respective plugins installed as per your requirement. So all these things, all these plugins are already available in Jenkins ecosystem. As per a recent article which I read, you have more than thousands of plugins available for Jenkins, and which you can actually go ahead and install and work with them as per your requirements. It helps you a lot when you have this plugin architecture. What happens is you can go ahead and install the plugin for the software which you want to use with Jenkins. And similarly, let's say you have a plugin installed, but you see that you no longer require it, then you can just go ahead and remove that plugin from the Jenkins master. So this basically keeps your Jenkins master in a very optimal state. So next in the list, we have label. Now label is basically a tag which you provide to your Jenkins slaves, and based on the label, you can actually go ahead and call your Jenkins slaves which one to be working with which project. So it's basically a user-defined text which you just provide in a box. And grouping is typically done based on similar functionality or capability. So for example, Linux-based agents, Docker for Docker capable agents. You can define multiple machines to work as your Maven build slaves or Ant build slaves. Or maybe you can have all your .NET based project slaves to be clubbed as and labeled as MS build slaves. So like that, you can actually go ahead and categorize your agents or slave machines. Next, we have something called upstream project. A project can have one or more upstream projects. This is basically refers to a project which comes before it, and upstream project is the one which actually triggers the downstream project. So that means that a build for the current project may be scheduled when an upstream build is finished. So by default, every stable upstream build will schedule a build in the downstream project. So there are several options and plugins which can customize the behavior, but this is basically to create a series of different projects and every project triggered by the previous project for it. It's a correlation of the upstream project when we talk about downstream. So upstream is the project which triggers a downstream project based on certain conditions. Next, we have artifact. Now, artifact is basically an output of a successful build. So at the end, you might get a var file or a jar file or an exe package. So anything which is compiled code, so which is known as an artifact. So you can actually save this artifact. You can keep it handy for the next set of work, for the next set of project. So for one project, you collect an artifact which can become an input for the next project to be run. So an immutable file generates during a build or pipeline run, and then this file is archived into a Jenkins master for later retrieval by users for different projects again. Next, we have this concept of workspace. Now, workspace is nothing but it's a directory inside your Jenkins master or inside your Jenkins slave as well. This is basically a directory on the node, which is a disposable, of course. You can actually mark it to be disposed every single time the new build happens. This is basically a temporary directory where all the files are kept for execution. So, and this is again the same directory where your source code management, the source code gets checked into. So it is preserved on best effort basis after build has been completed. So you have an option of putting a check mark that every time when a new build has been triggered, it should discard all the old build files. If you have checked that option, every time all the files and folders will be deleted from the workspace and it will start afresh. It will start from a clean directory. Now, Publisher is not a single tool. It's basically a set of tools which is actually part of the build after the completion of all configured steps are done. So basically, Publisher helps you in creating and sending reports, sending notifications. You can set up emails to be triggered to these stakeholders. You can set up some third-party tools such as Slack or HipChat or some other tool. The output or the end result of your build can be published. So that was about the terminologies used in Jenkins. We will get familiar with more and more about them as and when we work with our Jenkins course. So let's get familiarize ourselves with the Jenkins UI now. How does it look like? What are the components we have? And what are the options available for us? So if you remember this particular screen we have seen already, on your left hand side you have all these things called new item, people, build history, manage Jenkins. So the first item, new item, is actually helps us to create a new job in Jenkins. With the help of this people option, you can actually manage users within Jenkins. Build history, as you can expect, it will show the history of builds with this Jenkins instance. So whatever has happened on the Jenkins instance, which you are seeing at the moment, whatever builds have taken place, irrespective of which project they belong to, you will be able to see that. So basically how many were successful, how many have failed, and those sort of things. Manage Jenkins, you can think of it as the control panel. The way you have control panel in your Windows machines, and if you want to make any changes to your Windows machines, you need to go to the control panel. In very similar fashion, you can actually control your Jenkins UI, your Jenkins instance, through this option. Anything or everything which you need to change or edit or manipulate with regards to your Jenkins server, with regards to its capabilities, how it behaves, how it looks like, and all those things, you need to go to Manage Jenkins and use one of the appropriate options. So some of the options which you can see is configure system, manage plugins, etc. So as we progress in the course, we will be working with more and more of them. So My Views basically provides you a separate view. So let's say you have a very large organization and you have multiple projects being run on a daily basis on your Jenkins server. Then My Views basically provides you a way to create customized view of your projects only. So let's say if you are part of a developer team, and let's say you have 50 such teams which are being catered from this Jenkins master. So you don't need to see what other people are doing. You don't even need to look at that. So you can have your customized view in order to see, and it makes your dashboard much easier to look at and much easier to work with. Credentials basically helps you manage all the global credentials. We will again take a look at this option in detail as and when we progress in the course. Now build queue and build executor statuses, actually these are the two options. So build queue basically shows all the builds that are triggered at the moment, and build executor status, it basically shows what is happening currently. If there is any kind of build is happening, if anything is happening, it will show at this location which executor is running your current build for a specific project. Then when you create on new item, this is the page which greets you. You have an option of giving the name of the project. Then you have multiple options to choose from. Basically, it tells you, or it asks you, what kind of project you want to build. So freestyle project, basically it builds jobs which are general purpose kind of thing and which provides maximum flexibility. This is one of the most bare metal templates from which you can build almost any kind of projects you want. Maven project, as you can expect, it helps you create Maven projects. Basically the Java projects which uses Maven as the build tool, and it provides all the relevant information with regards to a Maven build job. Similarly, multi-configuration project or multi-configuration job basically allows you to run the same job on different environments if you have a specific need to do so. Jenkins helps you with this option. So once you are in the job, you have multiple tabs. If you see here, you have general, you have source code management, build triggers, build environment, and post build actions and other things. So we'll take a look at one by one to all of them. As we have seen during our installation and post installation configuration, that Git and Subversion are the tools which you get by default. Those plugins are installed by default on when you configure Jenkins for the first time. You always have an option of adding or removing any of the other source code management tools, but Git and Subversion being the most popular ones, they come by default. Any other plugin has to be added to check out the code from the repositories, as we have seen. So once you have created a job, if you want to delete, you just need to click on that, and then you can use this delete project option to delete the job. As easy as that. So it's not complicated at all. So let's take a look at one of the Jenkins jobs. Let's create it. Let's get our hands dirty on this. So this is the Jenkins instance which we have installed for ourselves, and as you can see, all these options on your extreme right. So new item, people, build history. We'll take a look at them. So let's first take a look at Manage Jenkins before we go ahead and create any new job. So as you can see here, these are the options you get when you install Jenkins and when you want to manipulate any one of them. So if you want to configure the global credentials, you need to come here. If you want to work with your plugins, adding, removing, disabling, or enabling any of the plugins, you can choose this option. System information provides you various environmental information to assist in troubleshooting. If you want to configure your tools to work with, so this is the option where you need to choose configure tools, their locations, and automatic installers. Similarly, Jenkins CLI is one of the Jenkins API through which you can work. So you can call Jenkins CLI to work with from the command line. It's basically a jar file which provides you. So you can manage your Jenkins from your shell or from your scripts. If you want to work with Jenkins slaves, also known as nodes, you need to click on manage nodes. It will help you add, remove, control, or monitor the various nodes that Jenkins runs jobs on. So similarly, you have all the options related to when you want to configure or manipulate these settings for your Jenkins master. How does it behave and how does it work? This is the place you need to come to. So let's go ahead and create the first job for ourselves. So we click on new item. Let's give the name as first Jenkins Job. And as you can see, we have all the options available which we have discussed. So we'll click on freestyle, as this is the type of job which gives you maximum flexibility. And I click on OK. So now I am on my Jenkins job configuration page, and as you can see here, I have multiple options. I can select from general, source code management, build triggers, build environment, build, and post build actions. So, and all of these are, as you can see, right here in front of us. So what we will do, we will create a very basic job to work with, to start a very fundamental job. The only thing which we are going to do is add a source code repository here. We can add a source code repository, or we can do one more thing. We can create a build step. And as you can see here, it gives me an options to work with either Windows batch command or execute shell and Rattle, Maven. So multiple options I'm getting. If I click on this execute shell option, this place actually gives me an option to run any kind of Linux commands which I want to run on my system. So let's test it out. So I'll do a echo. So I'll write a message. This is our first Jenkins job for Edureka. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to append this in a file inside my temp directory. Let's give this name as edureka.txt. So as you can see, this is a standard Linux command which I'm running. And this will put the output inside this edureka.txt. It will append if the file is already there, or it will create and then add this content to the file. So now let's go ahead and click on save. And now if I go back to my Jenkins homepage, I will be able to see this first page as first of the jobs is listed. If you see here on my extreme left, I see that it is a gray circle which has come up, and it tells me if I hover around, it has not been built. So Jenkins works on this very excellent color code. So gray would mean that the job has never been built yet, as you can see on the screen, or it was stopped intermittently during the last run. Apart from gray, you would find that the two other common colors are blue and red. So as you can expect, blue would indicate that the last run of the job was successful. Similarly, red would indicate that the last job run was a failure. Then when we go next, we have this option of checking if you see it is bright and sunny, the next column. So this is basically a weather forecast. If you see here, weather report showing aggregated status of recent build. So all bright and sunny indicates that last 5 runs were successful for this project. And what will happen is it will go cloudy, and then cloudy with rain, and then cloudy with thunderstorm, depending on how many jobs out of last 5 builds have behaved. So we created a new job with the help of clicking new item. Then we gave a name to the Jenkins job and we selected freestyle project. Then we clicked on execute shell. And once we got the box, we just wrote some custom message on the execute shell to be shown. And this is how now our final dashboard looks like. So it has got the job listed. We no longer have this message. If you remember, initially we have this message when you install and configure Jenkins for the first time. Since there was no job on your Jenkins instance, it was showing this message. Now, once we have created one job for ourselves, it comes like and looks like this. So once we have done that, we are actually ready to build our first job. What we need to do is just do a click on the job and click on build now. And once we do that, we can actually see the build history or the build details. And then we can check the console output as well to check what are the things available or what exactly has happened during the build of the job. So let's take a look at that. Now, before we start this, actually, let's take a look at our Jenkins system as well. And if you remember, we have given the console output in such a way that it should actually create a file inside temporary folder. So let's take a look at what do we have here. At the moment, as you can see, we don't have any file starting with the name Edureka. So let's go back to our Jenkins UI. Now we have two options. We can actually click on this small arrow and click on build now, or we can go inside the job. As you can see, this is the home page for our job, and you have an option called build now. One more thing, if I want to go back to the configuration page and if I want to make any changes, I can simply click on configure, which will take me to the same page where I have configured things before. So as you remember, the only thing which I have done is to give an echo command in the execute shell step. So I'll just come back to my project homepage and I can click on build now from here. So if you see here, the moment I click on that, after a couple of seconds, it actually shows me that number 1, and it actually shows me a blue circle. Similarly, if I go to my main page, it will now show a blue circle and it shows that it was a success. I go back to my home page for this job and I have an option of, if I click on this number which is showing as number 1, or if I click on this circle, it will actually show me the console output. So if I click on this first iteration of the job, as you can see here, it tells me the timestamp, how exactly it was started and what exactly has been done, the timestamp of when it was being run, and then started by user Edureka admin. And then if I click on console output, it gives me the detailed information. Now here, there is nothing much to be shown here, except the fact that it actually started the job here and it has run this command. And if you see here, it has echoed this command. Now, if I go back to my Jenkins instance, as you can see here, I have this new file created as part of the job, which was run. And if I do a cat to this file, actually, I can see the content as well, which I have provided here. Now, let's say what I will do is I'll go ahead and make some changes here. So I'll go to first Jenkins job. I will click on configure. And here I will write here as, this is the second iteration of our first Jenkins job for Edureka. So I've just made some changes so that it will be easy for us to identify the next build. And if I just go ahead and click on build now again, so as you can see here, it just took less than a second to complete because there is nothing else to be done apart from writing some content to the file. In fact, if I click on workspace, it also shows me that where workspace is. As of now, there is nothing inside the workspace, so that is the reason it shows as empty. So if I go back to my machine now, Jenkins instance, and if I click on cat Edureka again, as you can see here, now I have got 2 lines. So second line has also been appended to the same file. Now I can check out the workspace as well. If I go to cd var Jenkins, now this is the Jenkins home folder for all our Jenkins related files. If I do a ll now, I can see a number of files here, files and folder. Similarly, I have this folder called workspace. If I go inside this folder, as you can see, I have this folder automatically created, a directory by name first-Jenkins-job. This name is same as the job name which I have given to my Jenkins job. It creates a folder with the same name. And if I go inside it, at the moment there will be nothing because I've not cloned any kind of repository or something. Normally when you clone a repository, this is the place where you can find all your source code being downloaded or being cloned here. So that's how you build your first Jenkins job. And that is how you see the console output. You see the build details. Let's say if you have 10 different builds, you can actually go ahead and check them in console output, and every time it will show you a different output. So if you see here, if I click on console output for the first one, if you notice, this tells me this output. And if I go back and if I click on the console output for the second job or second build, it will show me the second message, as you can see here. So this is how, by going to the console output, I can actually check all the information with regards to that particular build in the console output. So console output contains all the logs captured during the build, and it is very helpful when you are analyzing the build, especially when for some reason your build have failed and you have no clue what's going on. Console output gives you a lot of important information and you can actually check what exactly has gone wrong with that particular build, and you can then fix it. So to summarize, in this module, what we have learned is, first of all, how to install Jenkins on our local environment. We saw the example of working on a CentOS machine as well as on Ubuntu machine. Then we spoke about all the terms used in Jenkins, basically all the terminologies such as label, what is a job, what is a build, upstream, downstream projects, and things like that. Then we spoke about Jenkins UI basics, what exactly are the options available, what is manage Jenkins, what are the options available inside that. We spoke about new item, where to get the credentials, and all those things. And then finally, we created and built our first Jenkins job. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.